Michigan Magazine is kept on the road by our many Michigan friends. Cops and Donuts Bakery, downtown Clare, a winning combination. Cops and Donuts. There's adventures around every turn, and if you're looking for something for you and the entire family, be sure and visit the Cedar Valley Golf Course and the Wild Frontier Fun Park on Weaver Road in Cummins. Play 18 holes of world-class golf at the beautifully maintained golf course, Cedar Valley, tucked away amongst the hardwoods of northern Michigan, and at the same time, let others in the family enjoy themselves at the adjacent Wild Frontier Fun Park with carnival rides, a batting cage, bumper cars, and a 19-hole mini golf course. Check them out online. It's a northern Michigan destination. This week on the show, along Michigan's side roads in Montmorency County, we visit a master, not only of the art of Scrimshaw, but the manipulator of hard metal into beautiful sought-after knives and machetes. Put those two arts together and you've got an amazing talent. We visit with such an artist, Webster Wood of Atlanta, Michigan. Then how do you encourage young people to successfully enter the art world? Well, you let them run an actual art gallery and learn the ins and outs of the business of art. That's the case at the 515 Gallery in downtown Clare. It's coming up next on Michigan Magazine. Cops and Donuts Bakery, downtown Clare, what began as a crazy idea among 9 police officers to purchase the historic Clare City Bakery quickly became an international phenomenon, carrying on a Michigan tradition with delicious donuts, pies, pastries, breads, original coffee, and more, plus a full menu at the new adjacent traffic stop diner. Downtown Clare, a winning combination. Cops and Donuts. Rose Valley Winery on Beechwood Road in Rose City. See what thousands are raving about, creating a delicious variety of award-winning Michigan wines. Stop by and taste for yourself. The taste of Michigan is yours at Rose Valley Winery.
We are with Webster Wood, and Webster Wood is a gentleman who does some beautiful engraving and scrimshaw. He is a knife maker and an engraver. Webster, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us here.
Thank you for coming.
Home and down here to your workshop. It's a pleasure to meet you. I've met you before at one of the shows,
Yeah.
and Tom Young, a mutual friend of ours, told me about you, and so here we are. Have you been a knife maker all these years, or what was your profession?
Well, I was a school teacher for 33 years.
Oh, that's interesting, to say the least.
In the suburbs of Detroit.
Uh-huh.
And I moved up here 5 years ago when I retired. I was a gun engraver part-time for 20 years and did that as a summer job and weekends and evenings and whatever. And finally a guy came to my house one day and asked me to engrave a knife, and I'd never had the opportunity to engrave a knife because the blades are always hard. Well, he was the maker and he had them before they were hardened, and so he said to me, you know, you can do these because they aren't hardened. So I went ahead and did them, and about a week later he came back with 6 more and asked me to do 6 more, and I said, well, what happened to the first ones? And he says, well, he said, I sold them. And I thought, well, gosh, I never sold a gun that fast. So I went right out and bought all the equipment and went ahead and did. Well, I found out 3 years later that he lied to me, that was his way to get me to do 6 more. But so I switched over, but I really enjoy it because for the first time in my life, the product is all mine. I make the knife, I do the engraving, and so it's nobody else's. The work's there, it's mine. So that's kind of the fun of it, you know.
So all of these years you've been a teacher, and you've been working at this craft that you have learned very, very well. You're very well known throughout the state, throughout the country with your beautiful engravings and your scrimshaw and making of knives. When you say hardened, the steel has to be hardened to make a knife. Can you explain to us what
the steel starts out as just a flat piece of metal, something similar to this. It just starts out as a blank piece of metal. You cut it out, and then you profile the knife so that it ends up being cut out, shaped, and then you go ahead and you do the grinds in here, which are the hollow grinds for making the knife. Once you get this to this point right here, then it has to be engraved, because you have to do it, and then you put it in an oven, and you run it up to 1950, well, it depends on the type of steel, but each steel has its own program for heat treat. You put it in the oven, and this particular one is a piece of 440C stainless, and it goes in the oven at 1950 degrees. When it comes out, it's yellow-white. You can almost see through it.
Really?
And with all the stainless series, it's called air quenched. With oil steel, you dump it into oil to quench it. But with stainless, you just put it out in the air and let it cool. And when it cools, that shocks the steel, and it changes what's called the marstenite inside, which changes the molecular structure and makes it hard. Now, when it comes out of there, it's actually too hard to ever use for a knife. It's gone to what's called maximum hardness. The temper then is you put it back in the oven after it's cooled, and you bring it up to a certain temperature for a certain period of time depending on how hard you want it to be. Now when this comes out of the oven the first time, it's at what's called a Rockwell of 61. It's so hard you couldn't file it with a file.
Is that right?
And then you put it back in the oven at 950, or at between 450 to 950, depending on what hardness you want it to be. And when it comes out, then it cools, and then it is that hardness of whatever you have set according to the program for the particular steel.
Now, would this be something that, I mean, say like the gentleman who was purchasing the knife or has come to you and said, I need a knife like this, and he would give you all the particulars, and you would ask him what type of knife, is it for show, is it for use, utilitarian use? Is that what you'd base that on? Or
it would depend on what he wants it for. Now, for example, a big knife like this, you would never Rockwell very hard, because if somebody was going to chop or whack with it, and I have guys have them made to build deer blinds and use in place of a hatchet or whatever, you make those on the softer side so they've got more flexibility. On one of my hunting knives, I'm known for the fact that my knives hold an exceedingly good edge. And what I do on these is I make them harder. If you try to sharpen this knife, it's going to sharpen with reluctance. But because it also sharpens with reluctance, it also dulls with reluctance, so it lasts a lot longer. I've got two guys
I'll tell you what, there's more to this knife business than I ever imagined.
I've got two guys that claim they've gutted 25 deer with one of my knives and haven't had to resharpen. Now, I don't know whether it's the truth, but I hope it is.
Yeah, my goodness, I guess. Your knives, okay, give us a little example here. We were just talking, if I came to you or a hunter or whatever, regardless, and come to you and said, okay, I'd like to have a knife made on this order. What is it that we discuss?
We'd sit down, and if he has a particular shape in mind, if he can draw it, I'd say draw it, or we'll sit down with a piece of paper and sit there and draw out the idea.
This right here.
Yeah, this is one that I did for this knife, is what I plan on doing with this knife right here. Eventually, with the engraving, this is going to be all blued steel with gold wire put into it, and this is going to be back here. It took me 4 years to find this handle material, and I paid $600 for it.
Wow.
This is a stuff called composite red coral. There's only one man in the world that makes it, and he swears he's never going to make it again. It's like a rock. See, you couldn't get a piece of coral that big, so they crush it, and then somehow reconstitute it back together and compress it. And he swears that that's the last piece that'll ever exist, and it makes a beautiful handle. It's terrible to work with, but once you get it done, it is absolutely gorgeous.
$600.
$600.
That's like
That's
gold.
one thing that people don't realize is the handle materials and things cost a tremendous amount of money. So what I do, we sit down and we draw it out here, and once I've got the basic drawing, then it's just a question of what do you plan on doing with the knife. If it's going to be a hunting knife, then we'll harden it one way. If it's going to be something, a lot of people get the concept that an engraved knife like this should be used strictly as an art piece. Now you can do that, and the art knives, such as this big one back here, is like one of these large ones. Most of these, I mean, there's no practical use for a Bowie knife like this, but it's something that a person buys for an investment, and this stuff is going up about 20 to 25% a year. I call this the griffin. If you look on this side, you see it has a winged griffin that I engraved into the blade.
Okay.
And when you get into knives like this, usually they have a name. They're like a piece of art that you name them. And this one has a piece of malachite with a cabochon on the back. And then when I constructed the sheath, I did the sheath with the same thing on there, so it carries the theme through.
These one of a kind?
Yes,
I know these
they're
reflectors.
absolutely one of a kind. That's what you're buying when you invest.
Right.
Now that particular knife goes for $2,200.
Woo! So it is one of a kind.
And people, people get amazed at the
price. But you
price.
spend a lot of time, a lot of hours in
that knife I've got over a year.
Is that
now
right?
It's not continuous. It's like the one that's in the vise here. You saw me working at that at the show. That knife is one of my knives. I have to work it around customers' orders. And so I can't work on it continuously. So I work on it whenever the opportunity arrives, and I like to do it at shows so people get an idea of what it's like and how you do it, because people think you've got some kind of a machine that stamps that in, and it's actually done with those little tools on the table, the little hammer and the chisel that's there.
What is the satisfaction? I mean, it must be good therapy for one thing.
Well, first of all, there's no money in it.
No money. But, so it's got to be therapeutical.
That's right. You know what it is? It's what I call the ooh-ah factor. You take, and people come up to the show and come up to the tables and they go ooh-ah, and they stroke you right there for what you do. And so it's immediate gratification, and you don't get that anywhere else in the world.
What was your influence? I mean, to get into the
In
was there somebody that...
In 1963, on the cover of a National Rifle magazine, was a Ruger handgun that I happened to own one like it. And it had silver inlays on it and whatever. It had been engraved by a man by the name of E.C. Prudhomme in Shreveport, Louisiana. And so I wrote E.C. Prudhomme and asked him how much to engrave my gun, and he wanted $600 to engrave it, and I was making $5,000 a year. That was over 10% of my salary. And I no way is Mama going to let me spend 10% of my salary on a gun.
Yeah.
So I wrote him and asked him how I could learn. And he says, well, I've got a book, and I'm looking to see if I can see it. Right here, this is the book that he sent me, and at that time I paid like $30, I think, or something for it.
My goodness.
And all this book does is show pictures of engraving. And there's one page that tells you how to engrave.
And so that one page was the one that kicked through.
That one page, right? Actually, there's a couple.
Yeah.
But what it amounts to is that's all there was. Up till several years later, I'd never seen another engraver work. I did my own thing, and it was... I still do things different than most engravers, but I won't change because I think my way's better. So
on the job training, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, Webster, at this point, it certainly has been a pleasure to talk to you. And come over here to beautiful, we're in Atlanta, Michigan, right?
Atlanta, right.
In Atlanta, well, elk country.
Elk capital of the world.
Yeah. And to come down here and visit with you, and we thank you so much for being part of Michigan Magazine.
Thank you.
Michigan Magazine is being brought to you in part by the Michigan-made rebounding mailbox pole. Never again worry about the winter snowplow taking out your mailbox with this ingenious rebounding pole. Your mailbox takes a hit and keeps coming back year after year. Call now or visit their website, toughmailboxes.com. The Cedar Tavern and Grill of Lupton, where friends come to meet friends and families come for delicious food and a wholesome atmosphere. Come relax with your favorite beverage or bring the crew for a great meal and live entertainment. It's happening now at the Cedar of Lupton. Experience the beauty, artistry, and taste of Northern Michigan. Come to Amish Country Natural Products on Mount Tom Road, north of Mile, just off M33. From arts and crafts to fresh foods and vegetables, all natural, all local, all good. Stop by and get acquainted with Amish Country Natural Products, 1454 North Mount Tom Road, Mile. The future of our art museums will be in good hands if teachers like Kim Kleinhardt of Clare High School has anything to say about it. Mrs. Kleinhardt's love of the arts and teaching has evolved into a dream come true not only for her, but her students as well. In Mrs. Kleinhardt's art curriculum, she incorporates a gallery management class. Today on Michigan Magazine, we find ourselves in downtown Clare at an art gallery called 515 Gallery, a fully functional and credible art gallery conceived by Mrs. Kleinhardt, but managed by her students.
My students actually learn to run and work a gallery. They do everything from picking out our professional artists to running the openings that we have for each of the shows that we exhibit.
So this is actually a class in how to run a gallery and do the presentation and bring all the art together then, eh?
Absolutely. So my students not only work with professional artists, they also work with the community. They go to meetings that the city has, and we have so much support from the city of Clare.
I tell you what, the support has been phenomenal. Looking at what you have here, how did this all come about? You know, it's not every day that a class can bring about a gallery and bring about an experience of actually managing something. How did this all come about?
Well, about 3 years ago, my husband and I found this cute little building in downtown Clare, and I've always wanted a gallery, so we just jumped in. We purchased the gallery and did the renovations, and then worked it into my curriculum so my students could actually take advantage of the situation also. So we just have a ball, and we've done so much networking with all the artists in the area. This is one of my students. This is Brandon Johnson.
Brandon, nice to meet you. And what is your medium? What do you enjoy doing in the world of art?
I'm very street art / mixed media. I do a lot of hands-on things.
So you're learning pretty much the ins and outs of gallery, right?
Yep, basically how to run the business, how to meet new people, the artists, and
And I think the key is you're learning is there's a lot of networking that needs to go on and bringing in community support, right?
yep.
Yeah. So what do you think of your instructor?
She's amazing. I mean, she's done this for us. We have a fully functioning gallery that us students, we didn't have to pay into it. She's helping us all learn the trade, and she's done a lot for us.
And they learn the frustrations, and they learn that there are actual artists that make a living at this.
So it's kind of putting to rest some of the other side of the starving artist. There are people who are actually making it.
There are. Actually, our artist that we have here, Justin Ladeau, was at Art Prize. He was one of the top 25 at Art Prize, and he sold his piece while he was at Art Prize and actually paid off all his student loans. So it gave my students the incentive that, hey, maybe this is doable.
Doing what you love, I think it can show and reap some handsome rewards if you just keep the spirit.
Absolutely. So they're seeing the real world aspect of the art.
So how large of a building do we have here? I mean, we've got quite the display.
It's actually 16 foot by 100 foot. We've left the back about 20 feet for studio space so the students can come in and actually work on their work in the back while we're having our gallery open. We have wonderful turnouts for our openings. We've had everything from 150 to 260 people at our openings, so we've been thrilled at the support and response that we've had from the community. We typically change our shows about every 2.5 months, and then we bring in new artists into the gallery so that we inspire and we're educating the community and our students on the diversity of the arts.
So what you see here, it's ever changing, so you can see all sorts
Absolutely.
of medium and artists and the backgrounds of people. There are shows when artists are in attendance. Is that some of the...
Yes, that's our opening receptions that we have.
Okay.
For each new show, we have an opening reception, and the community get to know the artists, talk to them about their work. My students actually introduce the artists. Justin's been one of my guys who's been an interviewer, and he actually has introduced several artists to the community.
I definitely want to go to college for gallery management, and hopefully, it's a dream to have my own gallery and feature some of my own art and friends, but yeah, it's definitely something I want to try doing. Yeah, it's a really great thing to get involved in.
What an amazing opportunity for students and lovers of the arts, and what community support. If you're ever in downtown Clare, be sure and visit the 515 Gallery. It's so conveniently located next to the Traffic Stop Diner and Cops and Donuts City Bakery. And after visiting the inside of 515 Gallery, be sure and have someone take you outside into the back alley. Now this is kind of almost a secret unless you tell these people about it, unless you're going back in the back alleys here. This is a wonderful mosaic. What is the story behind the story?
Well, our summer show we called Mosaic of Artists, and we had a variety of artists, plus my students and I also worked on this back wall in conjunction with that particular show we had in July. But we had all community people drive by, drop us off unique little broken pieces of glass and plates, and we have a story behind almost every piece that's up here, from a Santa Claus head up there that belongs to a lady. Her mom had passed away and she dropped it off, and so she said she'd be so thrilled if her Santa was on the wall, to broken Polish pottery that a lady couldn't bear to get rid of. So there are treasures all over, and my students and I spent 7 very long days putting the piece up.
So you're telling me that every little piece has a story and a history of its own then?
It does, and we had so much fun because we also had community members that would stop by and want to help us too. So we had quite a fun week, but it was pretty grueling. I think it was the hottest week in July.
Really? Yeah. Inside and out. Stop by to support the arts in downtown Clare at the 515 Gallery. It's an amazing stop off the beaten path. It's back and making memories for a new generation. The Rustic Inn of Lewiston, now open with hot, delicious food, your favorite beverage, and an atmosphere that'll keep you coming back to make new memories and new friends. The new Rustic Inn on Red Oak Road, just south of Lewiston. Hale Hardware, your do-it center in Hale, Michigan. Much more than a regular hardware store, providing everything you need for whatever your project is, along with a knowledgeable sales staff to get her done. Serving Northern Michigan since 1946. Hale Hardware, south of M65 at Ainsley in Hale. Hingeman Acres Canoe Livery and Resort on M33 just north of Mayo, catering to the outdoor enthusiasts. Cabins, canoes, kayaks, rafts, and more. Daytime or overnight trips along the world-famous Asabo River. A family getaway for over 75 years. Well, thanks for joining us. It's time again to meet up. Join us at the old US 27 Motor Tour as they stop in Clare August 25th. We'll be streaming, tweeting, videoing, Instagramming, YouTubing, Facebooking, and more from downtown Clare. Over 500 classic cars will stop in town. See you then and back here next week for another edition of Michigan Magazine. We'd like to thank all those that help keep Michigan Magazine on the road. Cops and Donuts Bakery, downtown Clare. A winning combination. Cops and Donuts. For home, medical, and healthcare products, visit Rose City Drug at 2640 North M33, just south of Rose City city limits. Rose City Drug has a complete diabetic department, including shoes. Serving Michigan for over 20 years. Rose City Drug, Rose City. Clemix Sales and Service on Mapes Road, west of Mile, your complete recreational vehicle sales and service connection. Visit their beautiful showroom of new and pre-owned ATVs, lawnmowers, power equipment, snowmobiles, utility vehicles, and more. Clemix Sales and Service is also the home of the American-made Victory motorcycle line on display at Clemix on Mapes Road, Mile.